Welcome to the Dash Mindset Podcast. I'm Sherry Zievenbergen. You were born, you're gonna die, and your adventure is your dash in between. So make the most of it. Unlock your potential in all aspects of your dash by embracing your uniqueness and living in a way that's authentic to you, not by doing more things, but by focusing on the right things. I'm a former corporate leader turned coach who's on my own journey, and I'm passionate about helping you on your journey too. So on the podcast, we'll explore how to live authentically by deciphering who you truly are and what you truly want. Are you ready to take a step toward designing your dash? Someday doesn't actually exist, so let's do it now. Hello, it is Sherry Z. I hope you are having a fabulous week. Thank you for being here today. I'm going to start out with a little story that has nothing to do with anything I'm about to talk about today, but I just want to share in case any of you have an interest in doing something like this. So the past week, we went to Arkansas on a road trip, which is about a 12-hour drive. And it was fantastic. We took our boys who they're 10, almost 11, and 13 now, and we went diamond hunting. Now, maybe you're familiar with this, but when my husband brought this up, I thought, wait, what? What are we doing here? And then he mentioned it was going to be in a field, and I couldn't get my head around it. It is fantastic. We went to this, basically, it's a gigantic field. 1 million years ago, 100 million years ago, a long time ago, it was once a volcano that erupted. And so people find diamonds in this gigantic field. They did diamond mining at one point. So you can either just kind of hunt for them and find diamonds on the surface a lot of the time, or you can dig around, whatever you want to do. So we give our boys the option each birthday. We say, hey, do you want to have a birthday party, or would you rather we go on a trip for a couple days somewhere? And our 10-year-old, soon to be 11-year-old, chose a trip. He said he specifically wanted to go diamond hunting. So that's what we did. And it was fantastic. We did not find any diamonds, but it was still fun regardless. And then we went into hot springs for a couple days. It was just a ton of fun. So if you have any interest in doing something like that, let me know. I will tell you about the cabins we stayed at. It was just a ton of fun. So anyway, now I'll get to the subject that has nothing to do with that. So we're going to talk about strengths today. So in episode 25, I gave you an overview of the UMAP tool I use with my clients, which includes CliftonStrengths. It helps you understand what your top 5 strengths are in particular. And I gave a little bit of an overview of CliftonStrengths. And then in episode 27, I gave a little bit more of an overview about CliftonStrengths overall, and I dove specifically into relating strengths. And relating strengths are how people naturally build connections with others. People with relating strengths are people-oriented. They naturally build strong, genuine connections, okay? So we talked about relating strengths in that episode. Then in episode 28, we dove specifically into executing strengths. And executing strengths explain how someone gets results. People who have a lot of executing strengths are doers. They're focused on implementation. They're focused on taking ideas and getting things done. Okay, now in a future episode, we're going to talk about thinking strengths, which is the third of the 4 types of strengths. And those strengths explain how an individual views the world. They're all about analyzing, processing, and generating ideas. And then today, we're going to dive deeper into influencing strengths, which is the 4th type of strength. We're going to dive into those strengths in particular. So let's start with what influencing strengths are. So influencing strengths explain how people move others to action. Unlike executing strengths that focus on how an individual gets things done himself or herself, influencing strengths are about motivating, persuading, and guiding others toward action. So there are 9 influencing strengths or themes. They're often called themes as well. And here they are: activator, command, communication, competition, significance, self-assurance, and woo. And I don't mean woo like, in woo-woo, like touchy-feely. Woo is really, it's an acronym for winning others over. So we'll get into each of those in more detail in just a bit. So people with influencing strengths tend to work through people to accomplish goals. And they move other people to action differently based upon which influencing strengths they have. Just like any of the strengths, we're going to do what we do in different ways based upon the specific strengths we have, right? So unlike relationship building strengths or the relating strengths, those people with relating strengths form deeper connections and often have fewer connections, but those with a lot of influencing strengths, really, they kind of get sick of being around the same people all the time. They don't want to work with the same people every day. It doesn't mean that they dislike those people. They just, they want to mix it up. They often prefer working with a variety of people. And in general, they have a broader network. So that's kind of the difference between influencing and relating and executing. So I hope that makes sense. And then next time we'll get into thinking strengths. But now, on the other hand, people who don't have a lot of influencing strengths and have several of the others, they just don't really enjoy influencing other people. They might be less comfortable with it. They're likely less comfortable with it. And they're not, particularly fond. It's just less natural for them to persuade others, especially when they lack the authority to do so. Or, they don't have the specific title that says, oh, hey, I have the authority to tell you what to do. That's not really how it works, right? But when they don't have that specific authority and they're not noted as someone's boss specifically, right? It's just more challenging for them. It's less natural for them to persuade, to motivate, to influence others. So an example of this would be someone who's in a project management role, right? So someone in a project management role they tend to, generally, they don't have the direct authority over someone because they are working with people likely in a variety of different teams, right? And so it's often challenging for someone who's in a project management role to have the level of influence they really want or, are kind of expected to have because they don't have that authority. And so when they need to be accountable for the results of people who don't directly report to them, for instance, it's just harder for them to ensure deadlines are met. Right? Because they need to have some level of influence over the people they don't have that direct authority over. So when people don't directly report to them, it's just more challenging. It does not mean it's not possible. And that's the case with any of these strengths. We always have access to all of the strengths, similar to the coffee mugs, which, if you don't know what the heck I'm talking about, listen to episode 27. I talk about coffee mugs and how they're similar, okay? But it's just simply more challenging. So if you don't have a lot of influencing strengths, it's just going to be less natural for you to be as influential and persuasive as maybe you want to be. It's just less natural. So now we're going to dive into each one. All right, activator. So people who have the activator strength, they just make things happen. And they really want to ensure that they're accomplishing something meaningful every day, that something is accomplished every day. So when I say that they are accomplishing something, they're going to be doing it through other people a lot of the time, right? And they just feel like taking action is how you learn. They understand that they're probably going to be judged by whatever it is that's getting done. And that's okay with them. They expect it. They actually, enjoy it. They expect to be judged. So the people who have these strengths are generally, they're going to appear to be pretty fearless. Now, we all have fears. All humans have fears of some sort, but they're just going to appear to just dive in and just get it done. They're self-starters. They're often the source. People might consider them an energy source because it just feels like, this person is just, they have this never-ending energy, that they're just fearless, right? Now, some of the cons associated with the activator strength, when overused and, as perceived by other people, potentially, who don't have as many influencing strengths, they might consider this person to be a loose cannon. They might consider someone with the activator strength to just, be one of those people who kind of speaks without a filter. It seems like they're just not thinking it all through, right? There's always that person in a meeting, right? Well, it might be someone who has influencing strengths, but the activator strength in particular. And oftentimes it's kind of hard to keep up with someone like this because it feels as if they haven't thought it all through and they're just, oh, ready, aim, fire, right? It's probably because they have this activator strength, and it is absolutely a strength. So this one is one of the rarest of the 34 strengths. It's in the bottom couple quartiles of all 34. And so it's relatively rare. Oh, I'm sorry. It's in the bottom quartile. It's in the bottom quartile. And when I say it's in the bottom quartile, I mean based on studies that CliftonStrengths, that the Gallup has done. And they've done studies with millions of people. This one in particular, there were over 15 million people in this study, right? So when I'm saying it's in the bottom quartile, it's based upon a study of 15 million people. So anyway, it's pretty rare. All right. Let's go to command. People who have the command strength, they just have a presence about them. And so think about someone who you just feel like they just have a presence. That person might have the command strength in their top 5 strengths, or maybe, in their top 10. They just make decisions. They take control of a situation and they make decisions. And if someone has this particular strength, they're just going to feel a little restless until other people are in agreement with them about a particular goal. And sometimes they are going to be considered maybe a little confrontational. So before we get into that, though, let's talk more about some of the pros associated with it, okay? Generally, someone who has the command strength, who has a presence about them, is going to be pretty charismatic, driven, direct. They're going to be very clear and concise because they're going to make decisions. They're going to make things happen, right? Now, going back to the confrontational thing, we generally view confrontation as a bad thing. So when I say it in this particular instance, when someone else is looking at someone with a command strength or working with or has a relationship with someone with a command strength, they can often feel as if the person is bossy or stubborn or inflexible, strong-willed. I prefer to say strong-willed instead of stubborn, but whatever. Strong-willed, stubborn, abrupt, maybe just, a know-it-all, right? And so that's when someone is overusing this particular strength, or when someone just when someone else does not have this strength in their top strengths. It's just hard for people to understand one another when their strengths are so very different, right? That's the case with any of these strengths. That's one of the primary reasons why there are misunderstandings between people, is because we operate the way we do based on our strengths. That's a primary factor in how we operate. And when other people operate differently, it's confusing. It just is. So this is also one of the rarest of the 34 strengths. Actually, this one is the rarest of the 34 strengths. So we have 34 strengths in society based on this study of 15 million people, right? And based on the study of 15 million people, this is the rarest of all 34. So you may or may not know someone who has this particular strength, but it's super rare. Okay, communication. So people who have the communication strength as one of their top strengths, they like to listen. They find it easy to put thoughts into words. It's just, they're never, what I picture is someone, writing out a card for someone. I like to find cards that just say what I want them to say, right? But there are people I know who just, their thoughts just flow. And I have a friend who writes these amazing thank you cards or happy birthday cards or whatever. And the thoughts just flow from her. And sometimes I'll write the person's name on a card and I'll sit there, and I tell myself, what is hard about this? I don't have communication in my top 5 or 10. So I am able to communicate, but it's not as natural for me as it is with someone who has this in their top strengths. But people like to listen to them, and they're good listeners too. I mean, they just communicate well. They're good conversationalists. They're good at presenting, and they're inspirational because of that. So oftentimes these people are good writers. They're good at speaking in public, explaining things. And they just, people listen to them. They're easy to talk to. They're generally entertaining, charismatic. Now, some of the cons associated with this, or if someone is overusing this particular strength, is they can be considered kind of a show-off, maybe a poor listener, because they're just, communicating, but not necessarily listening. Maybe considered a blabbermouth. People might feel like this person always needs attention. So that's when it's overused or when it's just not understood by other people, right? Okay, communication. Now, let's talk about competition. I laugh when I say competition because this one is not high for me. I mean, I am one of the least competitive people on the planet. In fact, this is my number 32. My number 32 out of 34, folks. I am not fun to play games with because I don't care. I don't care if I win or lose. And so I think specifically about when I was in junior high, I was pretty good at basketball. I mean, I was okay. I was okay. And I went to a small school, so I was on the starting team. I mean, so this is a small school. There was a time I was on, this is when it was, girls played 6-on-6. I don't know when that changed, but anyway, it was a long time ago. This was in 1987, people. Anyway, there was one time I had been doing layups in practice, and I was kicking butt at them. But then during the game, something went awry, and I was not kicking butt. So I decided I was going to go from the line. I don't even know if I'm using the right terminology here, but the middle of the court. I was going to do a layup because I'd kick butt at it in practice. I did not kick butt during the game, and so I went up, made an attempt to do this layup, and the ball went behind all of the, it went behind the backboard, and it was bouncing between all the bars. And I started laughing because that's funny. And again, I don't care. I'm not competitive with other people. I'm competitive with myself, but I'm not competitive with other people. So I can distinctly remember laughing. And I looked up into the stands to see Mr. Meyer, who was our basketball coach and geography teacher. And he just shook his head and smiled at me. And I'm like, Anyway, I went out for basketball again for a little while in 9th grade. It didn't work out eventually. But anyway, if you are someone who has competition as a top strength, you do care. I mean, you really, really care. You would not want me on your team. And anything, basically. But there was a gentleman in my the grad class that I taught last semester who had competition as one of his top strengths. And he was saying he does not care if he's playing Monopoly against his kids who are relatively young. He's going to win. He is going to win. So it's just funny how, how different people are in that respect. And I told him, I said, you will never, ever want to play with Monopoly with me. And he absolutely agreed. So, competition is one of those, is a strength. And for me, as someone who has it as number 32, I just don't really get it, right? And people who have competition as a top strength, they sure don't get me, that's for sure. So anyway, okay, now I'll tell you what the heck it is. I mean, you generally know what competition is, right? But if you have this as one of your strengths, you measure progress against the performance of other people and you want to win and you compete to win, and losing is just not an option. You're motivated, driven, you want to be a winner. Now, from the perspective of someone who doesn't understand this, and from the perspective of someone else who sees someone maybe overusing competition or the competition strength, it might seem like they're just not a team player, they're self-centered, sore loser, that could be the case. So it's definitely something to consider if you have competition as one of your strengths. And that's the case with any strength. Just consider how you might be perceived by other people. It does not mean it's not a strength. It's just other people's perceptions might be different, right? These are all absolutely strengths. Anyway, it's my number 32. I don't understand it. But I understand when other people have it. It's just I can't really relate, right? So, okay, that was competition. Maximizer. This one is in my top 5. Maximizer it's about taking something that's good and making it great. And so being someone who has this in my top 5, I'm not big on mediocre, right? I want to take something and I want to make it excellent, not average. So I don't want to take something that's below average and make it average or slightly above average. That's no good. That's not enough, right? I really like to take things from good to great. So I focus on, I really enjoy working with people who are great and want to be even better. And so some unhealthy ways that this could be described, or some cons with this, could be that I might be viewed as a perfectionist. And I consider myself a recovering perfectionist, by the way. Maybe picky, feeling like things are never good enough, always reworking things. Yes, 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 and yes. So this is something I have to be very conscious of because I like to rework and rework and rework on things. And for someone who does not have Maximizer in their top strengths, for instance, my husband, he's like, what are you doing? Just stop. And it's so hard for me to stop. I'm like, but I got to just do this one more thing, or I got to just do this one more thing. And he does not understand because he operates so differently, right? So it's something I really need to be conscious of and realize that, hey, I have to get to the point where I'm just going to stop. So an example of this, something that occurred to me finally when I was in my corporate career, when I realized I was working on projects a lot of the time that had a lot of challenges and I did not have the ability to make them great, that was really frustrating to me, but I didn't know that at first. It's something I figured out later in retrospect, which is often the case. We figure things out in retrospect a lot, right? But there was one particular project I was working on at one point. This was a long time ago. And it was a super frustrating project. And it never occurred to me that I wasn't suited for projects like that because I love taking chaos and organizing it. I love problem solving. But I remember with this particular project, it wasn't going anywhere great, right? And I was just continually frustrated because I felt like I can't even make this, like nothing I can do will make this better. I can make it, slightly better, but just incremental improvement was just kind of wearing me out. So I had a conversation with the gentleman who was leading this overall thing. Okay. And I said, hey, I'm getting pretty frustrated. And it's occurring to me that it kind of feels like I was handed a pile of crap. I used a different term. And he and I had a good relationship, by the way. And I can make it smell less crappy, but it's still going to be a pile of crap. He said to me, well, imagine how bad it would smell if you weren't involved, Sherry. like, well, okay, yeah. So I walked away from that conversation thinking, okay, does that make me feel better? I don't know. And then later, years later, when I really dove into my strengths and did my own UMAP, I realized, oh my gosh, I never would have been satisfied working on projects like that. Like there were a lot of times I just felt like I just didn't have this rewarding feeling when I was working on a project like that. And now it's so clear why that would be the case. I don't want to make a pile of crap smell less crappy. I want it to not be a pile of crap, right? So hopefully that's helpful for you. If you are in a situation and you're working on a pile of crap, recognize that, there might not be anything wrong with you. No, there's nothing wrong with you. It's just that, maybe maximizer is one of your strengths. So, okay, that was a long story about that one, but I think about that a lot when I'm working on things that I know can't become great. And, when I'm shooting for mediocre, it's just gross. Okay, self-assurance is the next one. And people with self-assurance they're really confident in their abilities. And it's like they have this inner compass that just tells them they're right. So if you have this, you recognize that your perspective is unique. It's distinct from other people's. And that's the case with everyone generally, right? I mean, we're all unique and distinct. But for someone who has self-assurance, they're just confident about that. And they just feel like they're making the right decision. And it's not that they never question themselves. It's not that they never lack that they never lack confidence, but they're pretty certain about the decisions they're making. And sometimes oftentimes they're risk takers, or they take more risks than other people. Something that can be viewed as negative about people with this strength, or their behaviors, I should say, they might come off as arrogant, stubborn, again, maybe overly confident. And so again, it's just one of, it depends upon your perspective. So this particular one, this is my number 8. And it's funny how again, when you recognize your strengths and you really own them, and not only recognize, oh yeah, these are my strengths, but you really own the fact that these are strengths. They're not just things you do. It's just, oh, wait, some of these things are less natural for other people, right? It's just so freeing to know that. And then you can release the things that aren't. Anyway, this one is my number 8, which I really appreciate. However, God help me, my 10-year-old, I know this is probably his number 1. And I love that kid so much. But I tell you what, even though self-assurance is one of my top strengths, it's still maddening when it's one of my sons. Now, I have not done StrengthsFinder with him yet. There is a kid's version of UMAP. And I made an attempt at one point to go through it with my kids. It was bad timing. You know what I mean? If you're, a parent, right? Anyway, I have to do that again, but I have no doubt self-assurance is one of those kids. So he will, and as he says things, I totally get it, because I can see the little version of myself doing the exact same thing. I mean, I can see the adult version of myself doing the exact same thing, but he will do things like, let's say it's a Saturday and we're at home, and I'll just hear him say, to my husband, yeah, we're going to go to Target today. I'm going to get a blah, blah, blah. Like, what? We never had any conversation about Target. What are you talking about? But he's just so confident. I mean, he really, and the thing is, he's not trying to be manipulative. He really thinks, yeah, we're going to Target because I made the decision we're going to Target. He can't drive, by the way. But I can totally see myself doing that. And so just know, if your kids do stuff like this, they might just have that, and it will serve them well. It will serve them well in life. It's just exhausting as a parent when you have a kiddo who is so self-assured. So I am continually telling myself, this will benefit him in life. This will benefit him in life. This will benefit him in life. And, witnessing the behaviors that you have in your children, it really helps you be more thoughtful about how you are perceived by other people, right? So I can see how sometimes when I just make a decision, my husband's like, "What?" I get it, because I witnessed it with my kid. Okay, just a couple more, I promise. I don't think I have as many stories about the other ones. Significance. This is the second to last one. So if you have significance as one of your strengths, you really want to be viewed as significant in the eyes of others. You want to be recognized, you want to stand out, you want to be known, and you want to associate with other people who are also significant in the eyes of others. So people who have the strength are generally independent. They really seek out outstanding performance because, they want to be viewed as significant in others' eyes. And some of the negative perceptions of someone who's overusing such a strength is that they can seem maybe needy or maybe just, really self-absorbed, focused on themselves, maybe desperate for recognition. And again, that's the perception of other people. Or this is just how it's going to turn out if someone is overusing the strength. This one is the third rarest of the 34 strengths. So there are a few pretty rare strengths that are influencing strengths. So this one is the third rarest. I don't have a story about that one. Okay, woo. This is the winning others over strength. And people who have the woo strength really love the challenge of meeting new people and winning them over. So they just love connecting with new people. And different from relator, which is one of the relating strengths or relationship building strengths, because those people with those strengths tend to have fewer, closer, deeper connections. People with the woo strength, if there are any strangers, they're just friends they haven't met yet, right? They're really people-oriented. They build rapport very easily and naturally. They're outgoing. And so someone who does not have this particular strength might view someone who does have this particular strength as maybe being fake, because it's that person has a hard time thinking, how can this person have this much energy and have the desire to talk to all these people, right? They might have the perspective that someone who has the strength just doesn't care about really deep relationships, that maybe they seem shallow. It's really interesting because I have a sense if someone in certain situations, it's pretty easy to spot, oh, this person is a woo, or this person has the woo strength. And the people who really don't, right? So I had a conversation with someone last week. I went through her UMAP with her, and we were talking specifically about her strengths. And I don't know all 34 of her strengths, but I have no doubt that woo is not in the top 20, maybe top 25. And so I asked her, and she has a lot of executing strengths, and relator is one of her top 5. And I said, so if you're on an airplane, I am guessing you never want to have any conversation with the person next to you, right? And she said, oh no, why would I do that? I'm never going to see the person again. So that's an example of someone who does not have woo. Someone who does have woo is likely the person who's sitting next to you on the plane saying, so tell me about yourself. Where are you from? And the people who don't have woo in their top strengths are generally the ones who are they're immediately getting their book out, looking as if they're focused on the book, whether they're actually reading it or not, because they don't want to have a conversation, right? So that's woo. That's woo. And I'm I'm guessing you know someone who has this particular strength, and you just know, right? So those are the influencing strengths. And just a reminder, like I've said in every episode about strengths, if you do not have influencing strengths in your top 5, in your top 10, it does not mean you cannot influence other people. It does not mean you can't get things done through other people. You absolutely can. It's just less natural for you. So I hope this was helpful today. In a future episode, I'm going to talk about thinking strengths in particular, which is going to be the last of the 4 types of strengths. And I'm just super excited to provide the rest of the story to you. So I would love to know, what has been most helpful for you in any of my podcast episodes? And if it's this one, any of them, I would love to know what has been most helpful to you. What would be most helpful going forward? If there's something in particular that would benefit you, I would love to know. Reach out to me on my contact page on my website, the-mindset.com. And I'll have the link in the show notes too. And I would just love to know. So please connect. Let me know what your thoughts are. And I hope you have another great week. Bye. Thanks so much for listening to the Mindset podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcast player, tell your friends, and leave us a review. Follow me on my social media platforms highlighted in the show notes, and get in touch with me at the-mindset.com. Share the topics you'd like me to explore in future episodes. Thanks again for listening to the Mindset podcast. We'll see you next time. Design and differentiate your Dash your way and make today amazing.